accolades come out, like we're the most livable city, someone like me is like, for who? My friends are college educated and, have careers, but they're not living the same life as maybe their white peers.
When you got developers that continue to put it through the foreclosure program, where you got grandmothers that sleep in the morning so the other grandma can sleep at night, where you got people living in the stairwell, hole, feces and urine all in the stairwells, where you got on every floor dope, and these grandmothers got to live like that. That's trauma. What do you do with that? Do you have poverty on top of poverty? There ain't nobody, listen, I'm for keeping property, but I am not for people living in prison. In prison don't always have to be bars. If one grandma got to stay up for another grandma to go to sleep, that is unhealthy in every aspect of the word unhealthy.
Today in Pittsburgh and today in the Pittsburgh region, our systems work brilliantly for about 70% of our people and hardly at all for 25 to 30% of our people.
We love to tout that we're the second most livable city in the country, and we wear that on our sleeve, but there are real, true economic and social traumas happening all over that we continue to ignore.
There are also serious flaws with how we prepare kids in this country for kindergarten. 2 kids show up on day 1 of kindergarten. One of them is ready to learn, the other one is not ready to learn. What's the difference? The one who's ready to learn had access to pre-K education, while the kid who isn't ready to learn didn't have access to pre-K education.
I'm sure that without education, change is costly. And I believe that if you're not educating the people in that district and preparing them for the change to come, then you're going to have a gap in society. And you see that in Pittsburgh right now.
There's a lot of people pretending like they know what's going to happen in the economy in the next 20 or 30 years, right? They're speculating wildly about what skills we need to be instilling into 15, 16, and 17-year-old kids. But the reality is that the change that's coming is unlike anything the human race has ever experienced. It's going to be something that's exponentially more difficult to overcome.
So it's very difficult to say that the education that we received here has prepared us for today's economy. It didn't. It prepared us for yesterday's economy because we're coming out of the steel mill. We're coming out of labor. We're still manufacturing, but the manufacturing is more intellectual now than it is with hands. And so the catch is, how do we prepare this generation for it?
Pittsburgh, I very quickly came to know, is so clearly delineated by its 90 neighborhoods and where the rivers run and what lines people cross and don't cross. And so a lot of that almost determinism around what a community's identity means to themselves and to the people who are viewing them, and many times passing judgment, like unfair judgment, on their capacity and potential.
About a year ago in Northland, I got a phone call and someone said, "Hey, can I speak to the owner of the company?" And I was like, "Oh, hi, how are you? This is me." And he's like, "No, like, can I speak to the owner of the company?" And I was like, "Oh, speaking." And he's like, I understand, like, but a lot of times I get like the assistant or the other person in the company. I want to talk to the owner. I was like, speaking. This is her speaking. And so just like layer on like being a Black woman in America and also being a Black woman in menswear, like it's almost unheard from. Most of the people in menswear are either older white guys or like, you know, Italians, or like there's just this really niche person who people expect to do business with. Now more than ever, I feel most comfortable in my identity with my business, because for a long time I didn't even want to be the face of the company because I felt that that could potentially impact buying decisions. I don't think people even try to be like completely like racist or prejudiced. It's just a thing that is inherent in a lot of people, where it's like, oh, that's a Black business, it's less quality, there's not as much thoughtfulness put into it. So originally I said I did not want to be the face because I just didn't want to have to face like people thinking that, because like I knew that I made a really quality product, and I wanted it to be judged based off of the quality and not based off of like something that someone had an experience or someone saw something on the news about someone and say, oh, I don't want to shop there because that's a black person.
Someone told me the best ramen in
You have an African American community that has not prospered. You have a Caucasian community that has prospered. And in many ways, out of 15 major metropolitan cities, Pittsburgh is the only one that don't have a black middle class neighborhood. That's why they say that Pittsburgh is the tale of two cities.
Me as an entrepreneur, like when I first started, I would have not known the first place to go. I started as a young girl in Homewood who was just like finding her way. I'm working at a coffee shop. I was back in school for nursing. I literally had no idea what I was gonna do. So had I been like given access to more things sooner in life and to networks and to people that could have really helped push me forward sooner, then I wouldn't have had such a hard, rocky start.
The new technology era has sort of created a lot of myths that companies don't need full-time employees anymore. I mean, we've sort of moved to this theory that we can have a gig economy, that companies can employ contract workers. When you hear about Uber, for instance, and you hear about taxi drivers, those taxi drivers who have had to drive for Uber have lost, on average, about half their salary. What does that mean for their family? What does that mean in terms of raising their children? Well, I think we need to untangle some of those myths. You know, the idea that there's always some new industry coming along that's going to disrupt the rest of the economy. You know, we need to disrupt the disruptors. I mean, we need to think about having a longer-term sustainable economic plan for our country and thus for our states and cities, where people can have some confidence that their world is not going to get turned upside down every 6 months.
We're looking at a potential shortfall of about 80,000 workers over the next 10 years, that the number of professionals who are retiring is far larger than the number of college students and K-12 students that we have in the pipeline. We will end up having, because of retirements and also growth in the local market, we are forecasting a shortage of 80,000 workers. That's a crisis. That's a crisis for the business community.